Hello, welcome. We're going to be practicing a very interesting ancient art called augury. It's a natural form of extrasensory perception. And what we're going to actually be doing is Spinnery augury. Say that 3 times fast, because we're going to be using a natural fiber like wood. And there are other types of augury that you can do. We're going to be honing and strengthening our clairsentience. This is an excellent exercise or way to get information through our clairsentience, which is our clear feeling. We may even weave in there some claircognizance, which is clear knowing. And we're not only limited to those senses, but clairsentience is primarily the main aspect that we use when we're doing this type of witching, if you will. So there are a lot of facets that are just absolutely fascinating that you can, or directions I should say, that you can go in once you get the hang of how to do this technique, which is really and amazing. Once you start to do it, you can go into healing, you can go into many other ways to apply it, but the first thing is to learn how to do it. You will need a couple of things. You will need a special paper, and it needs to be a paper that has something written on it. Now, I have a link in the comments to a PDF, this and another sheet that we use. Will be in the comments. It's a PDF. You can just download it and print it if you want to. You absolutely don't need to. You can make your own just by writing an alphabet and numbers. This one has a yes or no. It's got little symbols on the bottom for change and transformation, or path and journey, or health and wellness, or time and future. They're just little shortcuts. This is our beginning sheet to start with, but we go farther along once we start to master the technique. So you'll need these papers. You'll need a wooden pencil. Now you can use a long pencil, but I'm using a golf pencil because it's short, it's very lightweight, it has no eraser or metal on the end. You could feasibly use a very straight stick if you'd like to. And you want to set yourself up on a table that you can write on, and have perhaps a note paper and a pen or pencil, because you want to be able to make notes. When you're really getting into this, information comes quite quickly, and you want to write it down so you don't forget it, because as you're doing it, you're not really thinking about it until afterwards. You want to keep your ego to the side and keep clear to be able to continue receiving. And you also want to set yourself up in a well-lit area. This isn't something you do in the dark necessarily. The first thing we want to do is what we call dropping in. So I'm going to take my paper, and I'm just going to put it in front of me, and I'm going to hold the wooden pencil. And there's 2 ways that we can hold it. You can hold it like a regular writing instrument, and I'm going to demonstrate with my pen. If you do so, you want to hold it in the middle of the pencil. Do not go down to the tip like a lot of people write with their fingers right at the tip of the pencil. Don't do that. You want to be at least in the middle of the pencil. This one's so short, I wasn't sure you could see it. So as you're doing it, you're keeping, hopefully you can see this okay, you're keeping your forearm, your wrist, and your hand straight, and the pencil is perpendicular to the paper that is it's below it. The other way you can hold the pencil is as though you're holding a pendulum. Okay, it's very loose. You don't want to grab onto these things like you're hanging on for dear life. You want to be loose and relaxed. Even a 60-second meditation, or just a calming, quieting the thoughts in your mind, are a good idea before you start this. Maybe some people do a little prayer for the highest and best to come in, or an affirmation. Just keep your thoughts in a very positive way. So you can hold it as a pendulum, but if you do that, make sure your forearm, your wrist, and your hand are straight, and that the pencil is again perpendicular to your paper. So You go up about, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches above the paper, and you you can do this with your eyes closed. I do tend to do that myself. A lot of people don't. But find where you're drawn to on the paper. Now, again, some people don't put their pencil down. I do. Right now, I put it down on a K. And if I am in the middle of doing it, I might take my other pen and paper and just write down K quickly. Although some people don't like to do that because it breaks their concentration. It's up to you. I do tend to do that. Clear your thoughts. Don't try to analyze the message as it comes. Just take your time and practice. And the more you practice, like anything, you'll get better at it. Just make sure that as you're doing it, you're not trying to analyze what you're receiving. You can analyze it afterwards. And after your hand is over the right spot on the paper, okay, it just sort of stays on that spot, or you feel a pulling. And when you're doing this, give your hand and your pencil its freedom. So if you want to talk to your mom, don't go, wait a minute, my pencil's over here. I want to talk to M. M-O-M. You don't want to be guiding it like that. So don't use your own expectations to move the pencil. Instead, be willing to be surprised and be willing to be receiving something other than your previous assumption of what's going to come through. That is the best attitude to have towards doing this. So if you want to seek the truth, not just quick results, so take your time with it. Speed will come with practice, I promise you. But in the beginning, go slowly so you can feel that pull or tug. If your pencil keeps jumping out of your hand, it's probably because you're holding the pencil too lightly. Now, I would look at where the pencil point had landed, but that's me. And if the pencil just keeps moving away from your paper, you may find that what you're asking can't be located on that particular paper. If you're holding the pencil like a pendulum, you may be surprised, especially after you do this a while, that your pencil is no longer perpendicular. Let's say you're asking something about clouds in the skies. Did I actually see a rabbit in the clouds in the sky? And you look out down and all of a sudden your pencil's starting to point up. Well, it's pointing up to the clouds in the sky instead of the paper. That it's a three-dimensional experience instead of the two-dimensional we're trying to keep it to. So the way to avoid that is to specifically ask something either out loud or in your head, and be very clear and specific with what you're trying to ask. Yes, it's a good idea when you're starting to ask to get yourself rolling, because you can get validation, details, and evidence to prove that you are connected in and doing this besides your own feeling. Some people feel it, some people don't. Doesn't even matter, but you can get validation by asking those questions. More on that another time. So you just take the pencil, which either holding it in the middle like a regular writing instrument, or like a pendulum, keeping your wrist, forearm, and hand straight, the pencil perpendicular, and just see where you're guided to. I'm on K again, and put your pencil down. And you can keep a few of these in your memory, but I always try and write that down with my writing utensil and pad of paper that I have over there, just piece of paper, because we're not really trying to use our analytical brain, and that way we don't forget what we are receiving, especially when we start to pick up speed. So that is the first part of how to do this, which is dropping in. You drop in to a feeling, or you're using your clairsentience, your clear feeling, to find a position that you're drawn to. Number one, you might pause this tape for a second, try it, and then go back to this. Number two is a little bit more advancement of this, and that is storying, S-T-O-R-Y-I-N-G, storying or trailing, some people call it. And that's when we let the full message mature into an account of connected events. In other words, if you get the word chair, let's say, well, what does that really mean? Does that mean you need to be resting more in a chair? Does that mean it's the chairman of the board that's contacting you? Or does somebody just miss their favorite old pink chair? You know, so it's to use the storying or trailing, if you will, it gives you much more understanding about the message that you're receiving. That's the purpose of it. So what we do is we take the pieces, the events or experiences that we get from our message, the bits and pieces that are being relayed, and putting them together into a trail from one to the other to the other. And we can talk about individual personality traits or identities. It is all part of the message. So to do the storying or trailing, either one, we do what's called a searchlight or sweeping. I don't know what different people call these different things, but either the searchlight or sweeping, all you do is you take your pencil in whichever way you want to hold it. I'm going to use it like the pendulum, and you just start at the top or the bottom and you sweep back and forth till you find what is called a starting point. And you just go back and forth till you find it. All right, so I'm V for Victoria. Now, that's where I'm starting my message. So now I'm going to hold my pencil up a couple of inches, actually probably only about 2 inches or so above the paper. And while I'm holding that pencil and my arm is straight, I'm going to ask, well, actually, you probably should ask the question before the starting point. Sorry about that. But maybe the message is for Victoria because I landed on the V. But ask your question and feel the question at the same time. It's an asking and a feeling simultaneously. And you might find yourself getting a sensation or a knowing. And really what you're looking for is a pull, or it's like being on a train track or moving your pencil in a groove. The train track's a good example because trains can move around a bend in any direction, but you can only move on that track. If you go off the track, it stops. Your train stops and it's derailed. Same thing if your pencil was in a rut or a groove. It may do loop-de-loops and circles, but you're still in that groove or that rut. So that is trailing. And once you find your starting point, to figure out which way to go trailing, you trace, starts with a small circle and gets wider and wider till you feel a little nudge or a pull to go one way or the other. And when you do that, okay, VI, I can't believe that. Well, Victoria, I don't know. But VI, So, so now I'm trailing, and I can go on that second letter. And if you feel moved to go to another part of the paper, do that. And C, all right, it's just spelling out my name. So I'm going to stop that one. I'm going to go to the next one, which is a list of adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, nouns, verbs. It's the most commonly used one. And I only do this as a shortcut. So we're going to get a little bit more involved. You find your starting point on this one, and you're not going to spell out each word. So hand, all right. Now I'm going to start above the word hand, which is what I went on, and I'm going to start in smaller circles and get bigger. More. So now I've gone to hand and more, and because my memory is short, I'm going to put more, hand and more on my paper. Now over the more, I'm starting to not just use my circles, but I'm starting to find that groove or that train track or that rut, and take, hand, move, take, and so forth. So now I'm going away from doing the circles, and I'm just starting to move along the track of where my pencil is moving to. All right, sounds simple, doesn't it? The more you do it, it's just like dowsing, the better and easier it becomes. Remember that when you find that groove, you can move back and forward, but only on that groove or that train track. You don't want to go all over once you start to find that track or trail. Actually, the proper term is trail. So if you move over a part and you're not sure if you've skipped it or not, move back the same way that you came. It's a way of testing. Oh, yes, it's right there in the center. But don't go into circles once you get on the track, or trail, I should say. As before, remember the 3 things. You might write these at the top of your paper. Tune in, ask, and feel. Tune in to your senses, ask the question, and feel where your trail is leading you and when it stops. A couple of pro tips. Don't let what you think you already know influence you in any way. When you pick up a strong trail and you're following it, you yourself within may start to receive various reactions as you go along. That's part of the journey. That's part of the message. Stops and pauses. When you arrive at a point where your pencil pauses for a short moment, that's where you need to hang out at that one location and write down what you have. Like I put my pencil down because I can't really tell which word I'm above. Some people don't do that, and they can see it a little bit better than I can. That part is up to you. And if you really stop and you just don't go and you don't go, that's when you know, after a very long stop, that's when you know that part of the message is over, and you might go to a next question. And experience helps you interpret these stops, but that's the gist of it. So start with something easy like the letters in an alphabet. Then you move on to words that build more of a picture. And as you do this, as your hand moves and, was that more, takes up more time perhaps, whatever your message is, as you do this, you may feel an exhilaration or a passion. You may feel some other emotion, or you might get a little flash in your head of a picture. Make sure you write those down, because those are part of your message too. I hope this has enlightened you to Spinney Augury, or Spinney Augury Witchery, some people call it, which is just Spinney Augury and dowsing at the same time. Have fun with it and see what comes to you. I wish you all the best. Till we meet again, here's to your story.